Hey guys, this is Miss Jacobson. I know we've been talking a lot about characterization in literature recently, but now we're going to go ahead and talk about that same concept as it applies to writing. Specifically, we're going to talk about how to focus on characterization in our personal narratives, because a personal narrative is a story just like any other story you might read. So we're going to talk about how you, as an author, can use characterization to show your reader what your characters are like. Our lesson goals for today: I will recognize and use the Steele method of characterization. I will show instead of tell in my writing. And I will revise my climax to clearly show characterization. Remember, show, don't tell. As authors, it's our job to show our readers what our characters are like instead of telling them. So, showing would be this. Don't do this. Mama was so surprised that she dropped the cake. She got really mad at my brother for scaring her. This is telling. Mama was so surprised that she dropped the cake. She got really mad at my brother for scaring her is telling. You don't want to tell. That's boring. Imagine if every book you read and every TV show you watched was told in that manner. It would be so boring. You wouldn't want to read it. You wouldn't want to watch it. You wouldn't want to do anything with that story. Instead, what we want to do is we want to show. This is an example of showing. Mama jerked back in surprise. Her hands went up to cover her face like she was trying to hide from the terrible clown mask. And just like that, the chocolate cake went splat all over the floor. It took her several seconds to realize what had just happened, but when she finally uncovered her eyes and looked at my brother, her eyes were murderous. This is showing. Instead of just saying, Mama was surprised, she got mad at my brother. We want to show, using her physical actions, what she looks like, what she says, what she does. Show those emotions instead of telling our reader that she has those emotions. Today we're going to use the Steele method to help you plan how to show your readers what your characters really like. Just like when we read, we can use Steele to show readers our character's personality and their reactions to the story. The first letter of Steele is S. It stands for speech. What does your character say? How do they say it? Do they whisper? Do they beg? Do they scream? Are they using slang, or are they super formal and polite and correct? Are they rude or are they polite? And how can you tell that? So for instance, look at these two different lines of dialogue and see how different these characters are, even though they're saying similar things. "I'm so very sorry," she whispered, then sniffed as a tear fell down her face. That's one version of saying, "I'm sorry." How is that character different from this character? "Ugh, fine, whatever. Sorry, I guess," she said. Just from the way they said it and what they said, you can tell that those two characters are very different people and they have different motivations for saying sorry. The next letter of Steele is thoughts. So to show us what your characters really like, you're going to show us, what does your character think? Is what they think the same as what they say or what they do, or are they fake? What are their emotional reactions on the inside? For example, I nodded my head like I was listening, but as soon as she started talking about Riverdale, I was distracted by counting the ceiling tiles. That shows us that that character maybe is either trying to be polite or is trying to be nice to their friend, but they are kind of detached. They're not interested. "Oh, my bad," I said. "Go choke," I thought. What does that show us about that character if what they say is, "Oh, my bad," but what they think is, "Go choke"? You're showing us what your character is like as a person by showing us what they think. The next letter of Steele is E, for effect on others. How does this character interact with other people? How do other characters react to the things that they do or that they say? Are they well liked? For example, as soon as Mrs. Jones walked in, the class fell silent. Maria, who sat in the front row, paled and tried to hide behind her book. The way Maria reacts to Mrs. Jones walking into the classroom tells us a lot about Mrs. Jones. It tells us that she's an intimidating person. She's scary. There's some reason that they have to be nervous about her. The way Mrs. Jones affects other people tells us things about Mrs. Jones. The next letter of Steele is A for actions. So what kinds of things does the character do? How do they behave? What body language do they use? How do they react in response to plot events? How do they react? For example, I clenched my teeth, feeling my face grow hot. I waited until he turned around and then slam. I hit him square in the back so hard that he stumbled forward into the desk. So with this character, she's clenching her teeth, her face is hot. That tells us that probably she's angry or frustrated. And then that's her body language. And then we also see she waits until he turns around and then she hits him. That tells us that this is not like a character who's being real honorable. She's not real direct. She's waiting until it's going to hurt the most, even if that's like a sneak attack. That tells us something about that character. Our next letter of Steele is L for looks. It's our very last one. Just like your parents always tell you, your appearance reflects on you, your appearance reflects on your family, a character's appearance can reflect on what they're like as a person or what they're going through. So think about, what does this character look like? Are they messy? Are they neat? Do they put a lot of pride in their appearance? How are they dressed? What are their facial expressions like? Does their appearance change because of the plot? Like, for example, if they tore their jacket or they got bruised after a fight. An example might be, her hair stuck out from her head like an electrocuted porcupine as she was still dressed in crumpled pajamas, squinting into the afternoon sunlight outside. So her hair's a mess, it's sticking out from her head, she's wearing crinkled, rumpled up pajamas, and she's squinting. Those are all things we can see, so she's squinting into the sunlight. That tells us that probably this character has just woken up and she was sleeping hard because she's a mess. So what you're going to do today, now that you've kind of seen an example of each letter of Steele, you're going to use this graphic organizer and you're going to look at the climax of your story. In the square box, you're going to fill in how you felt at the climax of your story with details. So don't just say happy. Don't just say sad. Don't just say I was angry. Give me some sort of detail. So for instance, my example says, during the climax of my story, I was so embarrassed I wanted to die. You're going to put that feeling, that emotion in the box. Then you're going to fill in the graphic organizer that looks like a pie chart. And for each section of the graphic organizer, give me details that would show how you feel. Show me that emotion so details that are either already in your story or that you can add to your story that would show what you're feeling at the climax of your story. So for instance, for speech, I have voice caught in my throat, stuttering. That's how I'm talking. Thoughts. I need to get out of here. Where's the door? That's what I'm thinking. Effect on others. Emily gave me a sympathetic look, but Jasmine was laughing. That increases my embarrassment because some people are feeling bad for me and some people are just pointing at me and laughing. For actions, I hid my face in my hands. That body language, hiding away from people, that it shows how embarrassed I was. Because it's not just like I'm embarrassed and I've blushed and I kind of looked away. I'm literally trying to hide myself. And then for looks, my face was flushed a cherry tomato red. So the way I looked in that scene changed to show my embarrassment. Think of a detail for each of those sections of the graphic organizer. How did you feel at the climax of your story? Then what you're going to do is you're going to rewrite just the climax of your story and add in those new details from your graphic organizer. You can write the new paragraph, the new climax at the bottom of your rough draft and just label it new climax, like put it separate. You can do that in a OneNote. You can do that if you're online, you can do that on paper, or you can write it in a new document and label it climax. It's up to you. But make sure that you rewrite that climax because it's going to be an important part when we write our revised drafts.